taken the same vacation every year since 1989, except for 1 year. My buddy Rich and I head south on I-5 out of the Portland area and travel to Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Pebble Beach, and Pacific Grove. We play golf and view extraordinary historic and vintage automobiles. Yeah, I can't believe I've actually attended the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance 28 times this August. Next month will be my 29th. It sort of started out as a fluke. Rich, we worked together at a radio station in Portland, and he was going down one year with a couple of friends. I know he went in 88. We worked together. The next year he says, you should go with us. We had fun. So we took off on like a Thursday night and came back on Sunday night. It was just a really quick turnaround. Had a great time. We did it the next year and the next year. I missed 1 year in 1992. My son was born. He was 3 weeks old. I thought that was bad form to, leave his mom home alone with a 3-week-old baby. So waited till the next year. And so, 1 year we missed attending the show because we had car troubles about 8 or 10 years ago and didn't make it all the way there, although we made it to San Francisco and across the Golden Gate. Anyway, that's another story. So this is Tim Patterson. This is Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee for July 15th, 2019. Did you know I publish a blog? And the blog is over 10 years old. That's right. There's like hundreds and hundreds of articles there. Lots of people find the blog because of all the articles there. It's at TradeshowGuyBlog.com. You may be watching or listening to this show on that blog because they all get embedded there, the videos and the audios. Did you know I publish a weekly newsletter every Tuesday morning? You can subscribe at TradeshowGuyBlog.com. Did you know we build great trade show exhibits? My company, Tradeshow Guy Exhibits. Look for a lot of them. A lot of great clients we work with. Maybe you could be the next one. Who knows? Go to TradeshowGuyExhibits.com for that. So glad you could make time to check out the show this week. It's a fun one for sure, and it kind of relates to that trip in a way that Rich and I make every year to the Monterey Bay Area, because after today's guest, Ken Newman and I met several years ago. He's in San Francisco. We said we got to stop and visit Ken, although the story we met online on Twitter, and we had a number of phone conversations before we met in person and really hit it off. Ken's in San Francisco, and when we come back north from our weekend down there, we usually stop and have coffee or lunch or something with him, if schedules allow, and it doesn't always allow. So it's been a couple of years. We'd like to do that again next year. Speaking of Ken, I've had him on the podcast/vlog before, talking about his business, Magnet Productions, which is a really fascinating business and a very successful one. But he's got other stuff going on that I was curious to talk to him about, including his music and some of the work he's done with a nonprofit down there, Blanket the Homeless in San Francisco. Fascinating story how that all came together, and this is how that interview went. I want to welcome to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee this morning, Ken Newman of Magnet Productions. Ken, it's so great to see you. It's been a while. It's such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to see you too, even through this.
Through this thing here. So we've known each other for a decade, maybe. I don't know. It's been or longer.
Yeah, it's been.
And we kind of run into each other now and then, and
when you're down in Monterey looking at all the beautiful cars.
We're down there. My buddy and I go down to Pebble Beach and come back through your neck of the woods and say hey when we can. So anyway, it's fun to catch up.
We met on Twitter.
And on Twitter, yeah.
That's where we met.
That's where we met. I know.
Remember, it was a beautiful tweet. We shared tweets for a while.
Shared tweets. And then I picked up the phone and said, who is this guy? And we hit it off. So great. So I'm curious to ask you about three topics. Number one is Magnet Productions. You've had that company for a long time, and it seems to be doing pretty well.
Close to 25 years, to the best of my recollection. I think something like that. Yeah.
So exactly what you do. If somebody came along and said, "What do you do? What's the story?"
Okay, well, the quickest way to say it, we basically use, the term infotainment has come out to sort of as an all-encompassing phrase for a marriage of information and entertainment. And we started, and it's interesting because that's used as a catch-all thing for magicians and jugglers and comedians and whatnot. But from the very beginning, our concept in terms of trade show entertainment or trade show marketing was to use entertainment to accomplish that. So even before we started incorporating magic and a lot of other specialty skills, our presenters would always, we'd like to talk about breaking the fourth wall. We'd really try to engage with the audience. Often we would have a presenter on stage. We might have somebody in the audience pretending to be an attendee who was actually a heckler. And the audience would be really uncomfortable for a while this dialogue played out that just didn't seem like it was right. And the guy was a little bit too knowledgeable, but still kind of weird and filled with bags filled with trade show swag and kind of calling out the speaker, and then finally taking the stage, taking the microphone over, and then the audience realized, oh, okay, we don't have to get security. This is actually a routine. And when we realized how successful that was, just in terms of differentiating our clients' booth from every other booth at the trade show, that was just a person standing there with a clicker and 247 PowerPoint slides and saying stuff like, we offer you 24/7 mission critical paradigm shifting to enable cross-platform deliverable, that stuff. We thought, yeah, let's try to figure out humor. And so our focus is to do, we use a formula of 80% content, 20% humor, but our presentations are all scrupulously researched. And then we take that information, figure out, okay, what's a great way to tell this story in a way that's entertaining, but still really conveys a lot of content. And the principle is based on my first acting job doing educational theater. We realized that there are certain mechanisms, music, comedy, magic, some kind of visual reference point for a particular story that a client wants to tell. If they're talking about security and a guy is standing up there with slides, that's one way to do it. If we're talking about security and somebody's on a unicycle getting out of a straitjacket while he's delivering an 8-minute presentation that's completely, on point, and 250 people are watching this going, did they get a guy from shipping?
Yeah, really.
That good? It creates this wonderful cognitive dissonance that makes people go like, I got to watch this. I don't. And to the point of, how sticky the message becomes. 2 hours after the show, somebody will say, well, what do you remember? Well, this guy was riding a unicycle. Well, what was he talking about? And suddenly they'll remember two or three key points because it's connected to a visual, emotional condition, a visual that they got and an emotional condition that they experienced. Similarly with magic, if I take two 20s and turn them into 100, talking about two disparate technologies coming together, 2 hours after the show, somebody will say, yeah, I remember the 220. He made $100 bill. He was talking about Hitachi and, whatever, and it sticks. So that's kind of our principle in a nutshell, is just to make it sticky, make it entertaining, and somehow I still find it really compelling and fun to do after 25 years. So.
And you do some of it, but you also have some hired guns, as it were, that kind of work across the country. Is it out of the U.S. or is it just in the U.S.?
Well, we do about 150 events a year now. I'm very happy to say, and I've got probably 50 or 60, well, probably more. We just had a party for a bunch of people, and there were 50 people there, so maybe 75. Presenters, people who literally just get up there and talk to the audience. They don't have the ability to, make something disappear, or cut something in half or do whatever. They're just presenters, but they're brilliant. Andy Sachs is one of them, and you know him well, and you've talked to him on this very program. And, they have the ability to really engage, connect with the audience. So we've got people that are doing that. I've got magicians all over the place. I've got jugglers and comedians, people who do game show hosts, people who might run a blackjack game at a trade show. We do shows all over the world. I've got 3 or 4 clients I'll be doing at GITEX in Dubai coming up in October. I'm doing a show myself in Vegas next week, and I've got 5 other clients there. Doing everything from straight presentation to magic. So yeah, about 150 shows and however many, 75 different people. I do. One of the nice things about being the boss, I can kind of select the ones that I want to do. Barcelona, I'm like, yeah. Detroit, I'm in the middle of winter. Detroit's a cool town, but in the middle of winter, I might just blow that one off. So,
we can talk Barcelona. That's where I honeymooned 6 years ago. So
Oh yeah, great. Well, if it's if you're going back, I've gone. I'm so happy. A lot of companies, or a lot of event planners or whatever, decide to do their trade shows there. Yeah. Mobile World Congress is there. Cisco Live Barcelona, and I've gone a number of times. I love the place. But yeah, we're I try to do about 15. Maybe 20 a year, or less. I'm trying to move less, I'm trying to move away from actually presenting myself and more producing and creative directing, and then kind of transition into the other part of my life. So,
which we can lead to the next one, but I'm amazed I caught you at home.
I did a segue for you or what?
You set that up.
How do they afford me?
When one of the things you mentioned here a few years ago when we met in person for coffee, you said, I'm doing some recording. I'm going to do more of that. You obviously are doing a lot of music. You're involved in music. You're a guitar player, singer, writer. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with that. It sounds like a fun thing you're doing.
Oh man, it is.
It's your soul, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny. I started learning guitar when I was 12, 13 years old. Played a lot, coffee houses. Thought it was a great way to meet girls, play sensitive songs on acoustic guitar. Didn't work, but I learned guitar.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It worked. I learned the guitar, so that's good. and then picked up piano and never really did any writing, but I was playing a lot of rock and roll songs and in a lot of rock and roll bands. And then for the big chunk of the middle of my life, I just kind of didn't do it anymore. I was doing it for corporate events, had the opportunity to live out a fantasy camp dream, played with a full 10-piece lineup, doing a Bruce Springsteen thing at Shoreline Amphitheater for 30,000 people, 40,000 for Sun Microsystems. I would have paid for that gig. I don't think if Scott McNeely, the then CEO, had any idea how hot I was to do this, he never would have given me as much money as he did. But it was a great experience. But then I kind of stopped. I just was very involved with my son, who was little, and doing trade shows and corporate events. And then about 10 years ago, somebody asked me to front a rock and roll band. And I said, yeah, sure, what the heck, and I did. And it was fun for a while. And I still, get together with these guys. And then about 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to try just me and a drummer. That's what my memory from growing up was, wheeling my Marshall amp across the street to Ira Sokolsky's house. And he had a drum kit in the garage. And we would just bang away for, 3-4 hours. And I realized, if you have just a drummer, I mean, Black Keys, White Stripes, they did fine with that. Steely Dan was mostly just two people for a while. You got one phone call to make if you want a gig. You call the drummer, is he available? Good, you're on. You don't have to coordinate with 5 or 6 people. And I figured, okay, great, that's what I'll do. And so we gigged for a couple of years. But right when I started that, I decided, and I want to put these kind of two stories together, I decided that I didn't really need to make money as a musician, not that that's all that easy anyway, and that I would donate the money to charity, and specifically homeless charities in San Francisco. So I started with a few of those. And they would come to these events and representing their charity and talk to the crowd. And bit by bit, I noticed the crowds were picking up. The amount of money in the tip jar was doubling, tripling, quadrupling. People would match that with a check from the bar. And Google picked up and doubled something for one of the organizations we were benefiting. I think it was Compass Family Services. And then I got on Margaret Cho's radar. And Margaret Cho is a wonderful comedian who, right after Robin Williams died, decided she wanted to honor his memory. And he was a great philanthropist. I mean, raised, $60-70 million through Comic Relief with Whoopi Goldberg and Billy Crystal. Yeah. And he did a lot of really kind of under the radar stuff in San Francisco, and she wanted to honor that. And so she started a thing called Be Robin. And I found out about it, and somehow I found her on Facebook, and she said, yeah, meet me here and start playing guitar. Next thing I know, I'm playing guitar. There's a news crew. There's pictures on the cover of the newspaper. I'm working with guys like Bob Mould, who's one of my heroes, and Roger Rocha from Four Non Blondes, and Mia Simmons from Frightwig, and all these people are kind of collaborating on this thing. We're playing on the street, raising tons of money, and start to move indoors to some of the bigger venues in the city. And then over time, Margaret had to take off her career, kind of called her again. And so I tried to keep the Be Robin thing afloat. And then 2.5 years ago, a woman named Bronica Blue, who's been a friend of mine for years, said that a friend of hers had told her about giving out emergency blankets in Boston during the winter, the little Mylar blankets. And wouldn't it be a great thing to do here? So I said, yeah, what are you looking for? She said, money. I said, I can do that. And so I got on Amazon, bought about 1,000 of them, sent them some to her. And then I started bringing them to my gigs. I said, all right, here, I'll toss them out to the audience, and everybody, instead of walking past the guy on the street, hand him a blanket, and tell him what it is and how it can help him stay warm. And then over time, this kind of transition I bought more stuff on Amazon. I bought gloves and socks and hats and condoms and antiseptic creams and first aid kits. Had somebody write up a brochure that had listings of free food and shelter throughout the city of San Francisco, package that up in a Ziploc bag. I would bring those to shows and hand those out to the audience. And this whole thing snowballed. So it's like suddenly St. Vincent de Paul Society of San Francisco, huge organization, been around for 150 years or so, says, we like what you're doing. Why don't you work through St. Vincent de Paul? You can leverage our nonprofit status, and you'll have a page on our website. Then all of a sudden, I have the credibility of being involved with a huge organization. Back to music, I have an album coming out in about 5 months called Dreaming of Guns. I just released a single from that today, which is on CD Baby, should be on it's on Pandora now, be on Spotify tomorrow, I think, called Nothing to See Here. And the producer, Scott Mickelson, who's producing my album, said to me one day, after he'd had a success with a thing called After the Fire that he did. It was a fundraiser, a compilation CD to benefit people who were victimized by, sadly, not the last fire, but the one before that, the one up in Napa County, and in the North Bay, Santa Rosa, that area. And he said, I'd like to do that for Blanket the Homeless. He said, let me see what artists I can get interested. And he got Fantastic Negrito, who just won his second Grammy Award, and Conbrio and Brothers Comatose and Rainbow Girls and Whisker Man and oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Scott Mickelson himself has a track. I'll have a track on it. We got so many artists that it's a double, and you look right behind you, you see all that. It's vinyl. We are
nice.
A double vinyl. We have a beautiful cover. It should be released in October or so. We've got a concert at the, I believe, the Independent in San Francisco in November, an album release. And all of the artists donated their tracks. They came to Mill Valley, most of them, to record them. Scott did all the production work. I'm executive producing, which essentially means money, and which is fine. All of the proceeds, album sales, ticket sales, everything is going to go directly to Blanket the Homeless. And it's amazing. I mean, somebody said, well, you've kind of like moved through into music pretty deeply in a short period of time, relatively. And I said, it's not like, I mean, I think I'm a good songwriter, and I think the stuff I've written is interesting. It's about this connection to the homeless community. I mean, I kind of made a decision that wasn't really by design. It wasn't, oh, this is going to be really successful. It was like, well, I don't need the money as a musician, so why don't I do something good with it? And then all of a sudden, it felt like the world started to conspire to help me. This local music community is unbelievable. I mean, there's something called Local Vocals, which is something started by a guy named Theo McKinney, who basically let singer-songwriters play in hotels, and they've set up sound systems at a number of hotels in the city. So now there's all these little venues where you can play for an hour, do your own material, work on some new stuff, entertain some people drinking. You got an audience that's already drinking. I mean, come on, it's like, and free wine. I mean, please.
But it all became out because of your love of music and wanting to get back into it. And it seems like one day after another step fell into place, and it was a logical thing to do. And now here you are.
Right. It's that feeling of like, you lead with, instead of being like really empirical and like, here's a strategy, here's a tactic, here's what I'm going to do. I just led with this, it was just sort of like, this is something that
I'm doing music because I like it. And oh my goodness, look what's happening. So
it's the kind of thing that makes you want to keep making those decisions that are just heart-based instead of
intellectual. So a couple things. Where can people find your single, and then where can they help out on Blanket the Homeless if they'd like to?
Well, thank you for asking. In order of increasing importance, we'll start with the single. The single is called Nothing to See Here. It's the second single I released about a month ago. I released a single called I Can't Breathe.
Which I heard just yesterday, yeah.
And that's for Eric Garner. That was, about the kind of the beginnings of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so that can be found quite literally searching on Spotify. Apparently Pandora now has a Ken Newman music channel. Amazon Music has it, iTunes or Apple Music has it. The first tune for sure, I Can't Breathe, and Nothing to See Here, within the week. That's also available on CD Baby. Or if you just go to Facebook and look for Ken Newman or Ken Newman Music, you'll find it. The charity is listed on Facebook as well. It's Blanket the Homeless. If you go to blanketthehomeless.org, you'll find our website. The charity is listed on Facebook under Blanket the Homeless. So you can do a search for Blanket the Homeless on Facebook, look for fundraiser, and it's up there. I think we're about 3,000 into a $5,000 goal. We've already raised 8,000 through a previous fundraiser. So I'm quite honestly deeply moved by the generosity of people that we're all living in rough times. And people are stepping up with $100, $150 that I honestly know they can ill afford. I mean, and this is true of some musicians, and this is particularly telling when it's coming from people like on the East Coast. I mean, it's specifically benefiting the Bay Area, but somehow, it's
every community has their challenges, to help around the world, we have a homeless community here in Salem. Obviously, it's pretty bad in Portland.
Yeah.
And everyone needs help, and I really appreciate that you're able to step up and get involved with all these people. It sounds like obviously it's a community effort. You can't do it yourself, but
it's a game of inches too. You start. I mean, I'm one guy. I've got like people said, well, what's the infrastructure of Blanket the Homeless? I said, you're looking at it. This is it. I got some Ziploc bags. I got a bunch of crap that I stick in the Ziploc bags and I throw them out to people. When I at a bar, and hope they'll turn away from whatever's on the tube. And that's the thing that's interesting, is that these same clubs that I would play where people would barely pay attention, I'll stop in between songs and say, hey, I just want to let you know a little bit about what we're doing. You see that tip jar, You look out the window, you see these guys walking by, people with PTSD, people that 3-4 months ago had apartments in San Francisco that are now living on the streets. This is why we're doing it. And bit by bit, you can feel this kind of tidal shift in the room. People stop talking. They stop watching TV. It's kind of mind-boggling.
And I think part of it is, there, but for the grace of God goes
man.
I,
So many people are one paycheck away from that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
Ken, it's great to catch up. I really appreciate your time, and I do hope to see you in about 5 or 6 weeks in the Bay Area when I pass through and back on.
I'm looking for a new car. So if you're going to be down there, just take a picture.
Yeah.
I'm probably not quite Rolls Royce, but if you find like a reasonably priced Ferrari, a model of one of the little
used one, right?
The plastic ones, yeah, right.
Yeah, right. There you go. Ken, it's always fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Ken for spending time on the show today. Really appreciate it. Check the show notes for links. Time for this week's Trade Show Tip of the Week. It's actually a list from my book, Trade Show Superheroes and Exhibiting Zombies. There's a list, actually, of things not to do. 20 dumb things exhibitors do, just by attending trade shows and watching people that are exhibitors. You can start to compile a list of dumb things they do. So if I give you the list, maybe you'll recognize yourself in there, or maybe you'll say, I would never do that. But then you might hear something and go, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, here's the list. Just kind of poking fun. Number 1, show up understaffed. You can't be understaffed. It just doesn't work very well. Number 2, neglect to train your staff. When your staff shows up at the booth, they need to know what's going on and why they're there. Number 3, show up with nothing more than a booth and some people and no plan. So that doesn't work either. But I've seen it happen. Number 4, forget to update the graphics, which would reflect new products or services. You've seen booths with graphics that are, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they've got something different in the booth than what's reflected there. Number 5, fail to keep the booth clean. Really, a clean booth is a good booth. Number 6, ignore visitors. You see this all the time. It's a dumb thing to do, though. Number 7, stand in the booth with your arms folded. Your body language is basically saying, stay away from me. So there's something to be said for not doing that. Number 8, wait until the last minute to call your graphic production company with a change of graphic plans. And then you're hustling. And then you're just like a fire drill. Number 9, wait until the last minute to do anything. Exhibit planning and execution usually takes twice as much time as you think. So if you think you got like 3 months, start 5 or 6 months ahead of time. That way you'll get it all done. Number 10, being indecisive, letting time slip by, and then being forced to make quick decisions, because when you do that, they may not be the best decisions you can make. Number 11, think that trade show convention is your time to party, baby. Parties till 3 o'clock, sure, why not? Yeah, that's kind of a dumb thing to do. Number 12, bringing a generic brochure to where you should be promoting a specific product or service to that specific audience. Number 13, thinking there's only one way to do things and remaining inflexible. Even in the midst of a show, I've advised and I've seen clients change things around in the booth, move counters and move tables and things from day to day just because they want to see how it works and how the traffic flow is affected and things like that. Always good to experiment. Number 14, failing to listen to your customers. A trade show is a perfect place to do, mini polls and customer research. Number 15, not taking a break when you clearly need it, which means, going back to number 1, showing up understaffed. If you have enough staff, you can schedule those breaks, and people get a break and go sit down and do what they need to do, have lunch. Number 16, failing to collect pertinent information from each prospect. Contact information, follow-up details, so on and so forth. There's a whole science and art to getting the right information and making sure the next step is in place before you let that person go. Number 17, neglecting to confirm with your prospect exactly when your next contact will be and what that contact will specifically address. Number 18, not taking advantage of early booking for next year's show before you leave this year's show. It usually saves you time and gets you a better spot. Number 19, failure to watch every nickel or dime, so you plan next year's show by taking into account this year's cost savings. It's easy to overspend at trade shows by signing up for things too late. You're paying extra fees and things like that. And finally, number 20, failing to debrief your staff at the end of every day while it's fresh in their minds. And when you do that, you get good suggestions and good comments and good feedback, stuff that you can implement the very next day. So that's my list of 20 dumb things exhibitors do. You can find the book, Trade Show Superheroes and Exhibiting Zombies at Amazon.com. It's really just a compilation of a lot of lists I've published in the blog over the years, a lot of revised ones, some updated ones, and things like that. And this week's one good thing to wrap it up: bicycling. Summer's my time for bicycling, winter's my time for skiing. So let's make bicycling the one good thing. Although I'm not doing it as much of it this summer because I'm really busy, focused on another project. It's kind of a longer project, which is the clock is ticking. As a house I've owned for 21 years that I'm getting ready to sell. And as my old neighbor across the street said to me when I was over there yesterday, he said, it almost seems like it's harder to get a house ready to sell than it is to be a homeowner and live in it because there's so much to do. And like I say, the clock's ticking. But I am getting time 3 or 4 times a week to get out and ride my bike for 8 or 10 miles a day. It's a good 40 to 45 minute ride. And I love it. It's my way of kind of de-stressing. That is it for this week's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. Have yourself a great week. I'm Tim Patterson, Trade Show Guy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.